What's up, folks? How y'all doing? Dr. Chris Alexander, aka the Professor of Video Games, and today we are here again, the final fantastic podcast episode here at the Blacklyte booth at CES 2025 in Vegas. How y'all doing today? How y'all doing on both Twitch channels, Blacklyte and my channel? We're super excited to have you today. Today we're all about esports and the business of esports. We're going to chat a little bit about that, but before we get into it, let's get into brief introductions. Starting with you, Alex, the Big King.
Damn, I thought you were doing it yourself first.
You want me to do it? All right.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of messed up my rhythm. Damn. Okay. Alex Liu from Blacklyte. You guys already know. Founder, runner of the whole company. What we do here is we do full immersive experiences for personalized space. A long sentence. That goes from ergonomic design, furniture like gaming chair, gaming desk, all the way to algorithm-based applications like sensor designs on lightings and haptics. So we start to pivot a little bit to the peripheral worlds. We have the new keyboard launching this year, and then the new controllers. If anyone's around the booth, come in, check it out. We have the streamer going all day. And then on the other side, we have the living room setup showing you the work side and the game side. And the gaming ones actually, we hooked it up syncing to Counter-Strike. So if you test out the game, it actually sync with all the effects in the Counter-Strike. Health, shield, ammo, flash, and grenades. That's what it is.
Amazing. Do a lot of great work. You can see it there. If you are in Vegas, come by and see. We are just behind that window right there. Come check it out. As for me, both Google and Bing refer to me as the Professor of Video Games. But what on earth does that mean? I break my research up into 3 core areas. The first area is video game design. That's how we create, make, and shape an experience for at least one person other than ourselves. Second one is solo production. I help students jump from 0 to 50,000 subscribers in just 5 weeks using software like Open Broadcaster software. And the last area, the evolution of education, we're talking a lot about AI, but that's enough about me. Take a look at our fantastic panel right here from left to right. We've got Tom, we've got Akshat, and we've got Neil. That's Fnatic, Nodwin, and Overactive Media. We're gonna go around the room in order, starting with you, Tom, talking about you, your superpowers, and what you were put on this planet to do.
Yeah, awesome, man. Really appreciate being here. It's been a great time so far at CES. So a bit of context on me. I lead the brand partnerships and business development team at Fnatic. So really what that means is the goal for our team is to figure out how we're working with brands in the best way possible. So figure out what is it that we can offer from a unique perspective as an esports team, whether that's through content, whether that's through the professional teams and the talent themselves, whether that's through activating at events, esports events as well. And essentially coming together with our partners and for the sum of our parts being greater than just the few of the others. And so, yeah, it's been a great time. I've been with the team for a year and a half, 2 years, and it's been a lot of change in esports over the last few years.
Amazing. So for the students that are watching, everybody really, they're going to be really interested in the games you gravitate towards or experiences you like. Can you share a little bit of that before we move on to Akshat?
For sure. So Fnatic, our big games, League of Legends, Valorant, Counter-Strike, very famous for. We've been around for 20 years. So, if you go all the way back, you can probably find some Quake in there as well. Personally, I'm a big League of Legends player, which is my go-to. But, the usual Call of Duty back in the day, like everyone. Got addicted to Warzone during COVID, like everyone. But yeah, big gamer myself. And so it's just a pleasure to work in an industry like this.
So you've sort of transferred your passion into your profession.
Yeah, for sure. That was
cool.
the idea.
That was the cool. I feel the same way. All right, Akshat, tell us about you, your excitement, and what you were put on this planet to do.
Well, hi, my name is Akshat. I'm a co-founder of something called Nodwin Gaming. We are India's largest gaming company in esports, now the third largest in the world. Yeah. 22 offices and pretty much everyone below the Tropic of Capricorn.
Wow.
I call it the Global South. This is where the young people are, so Indonesia, Vietnam, India, Pakistan, Dubai, Nigeria, Kenya. These are the places where we are.
Amazing.
And I like building companies. This is my 12th venture in life. And I like the pain and suffering, as a lot of people go ahead and say. But I think it's founders like building. And we've been able to go ahead and invest in about 15 other companies across the world. Over time, and I call them, I like collecting founders. So, and then as gamers, I call this quests, like founders go on quests.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you're a founder and I take your company away, then you lose purpose.
Yeah.
So I often like to say companies are great. They're a microcosm of an opportunity of value creation at a certain time. But once that is done, you want something else to do, right? Yeah. It's your next company. You've done this before.
Exactly.
And all of us need that calling to go ahead and do it. And I think I'm out to go ahead and build the Disney of the emerging worlds. So we own music festivals, for example.
Yeah.
We own 4 music festivals. I own an accessories company which does T-shirts and merchandising.
Oh, I want to see those shirts. Let's go.
And we own influencer networks and esports, and we sell content and license content to Netflix and Amazon. So closing comment, we like to build something called timeshare of mindshare of young people in the world. And that's something that grows.
Need more founders in this world. What can you say to our students who are watching today about some of the games that are under your purview with Nodwin, as well as how you've managed to sort of complete corporate Elder Scrolls, where like you're doing the most difficult thing of just company after company?
Look,
I meant Elden Ring. Sorry.
It's the tough world, right? That if you love pain and suffering. I come from a time where there were no save games.
Yes.
Right? You
Wow.
Nothing. There was no save games.
Yes.
And I also come from a country, which is India, where we had power cuts.
Yeah.
Now imagine the two things going together.
Yeah.
You have to finish the whole game within a time limit.
Yeah.
Because,
a power time.
Because the power goes, and then you start again.
Yeah.
So when you build for the market that you are in, you will do great things. India is never going to be the United States. India is never going to be China. India is going to be India.
Yeah.
Right? For good or bad.
Yeah.
Right? As an example, most populous country in the world. When I started going and building this, and we know each other for a very long time, but the first thing I wanted to go ahead and do was, hey, I want to do esports, give me sponsorship. And my first sponsorship, and I often like to say this, is the local distributor of a peripherals company came to us and said, here's a mouse pad, give it back once you're done. From there to build a $200 million company revenue is been a 10-year journey.
Did you return the mouse pad afterwards?
We had to.
I love it. I love it.
So then the question is, why did that happen?
Yeah.
And and the depth of that is, that's why you go to business school, that's why you understand. The understanding of that was, the guy's a distributor. Distributors hate giving margins because it's not their job to build markets. It's the marketing teams to build markets, but marketing teams will not exist in smaller new markets because there's just not enough volume.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough volume, you have to go ahead and sell to someone else who cares about gamers.
Yeah.
And in India, the people who cared about gamers were Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Red Bull, and Monster, because that's the young audience, and that there are millions of them. So my first 14 sponsors were never gaming companies. They were all youth companies.
Focus on the core demographic.
Focus on who your consumer is.
Yeah.
And my consumer is a young kid going out and playing video games.
Amazing. All right, Neil, tell us about you, your superpowers, and what gets you amped up about your field, particularly in the business of esports.
Well, first off, Dr. Chris and Alex, thanks so much for having us here today. Thrilled to be in Vegas. What I realized was this is actually a revelation that just came to me. I want to be Akshat when I grow up. Isn't that an amazing story? Isn't that inspiring? 12 companies and now building this one that, you know, I admire. And the first thing I said to him was, I've been following your journey. I love it. And congratulations on all the recent success and continued success. First off, my name is Neil Duffy, Chief Commercial Officer of a company called Overactive Media. Very proud partner with Blacklyte. And we are an esports first company. A lot of people say we're gaming or we're creator economy, we're influencers, we're esports, but you can't be everything to everyone. And what we are is we are an esports company. We own the world's best Call of Duty team, Toronto Ultra. We own teams in League of Legends, in Valorant, in Counter-Strike, various other titles, Teamfight Tactics, Fortnite, beyond. And what we do is we go to market globally. We've got a Toronto HQ, we've got a Spanish HQ, and a recently built German HQ in Berlin. And we house our teams, we train our teams, and we compete in the biggest titles. We're trying to win championships.
Yeah.
And all along the way, what we're trying to do is sell skins in games, which is what the new methodology is of how real esports teams make the bulk of their money. Sponsorships we love, and that's where I spend 70-80% of my time. But then where the real revenue can be is people having that passion, that fandom, and aspiring to play as one of your players or skins or guns in the game.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We've got brands like Red Bull and Monster and Bell and Telefonica, AMD, Blacklyte that support us, and we're going to change the world through gaming.
Amazing. So today at this table, partnership table, we're chatting about some of the strengths and sort of educational lessons for those watching. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of questions which you're going to see at the very bottom. We're going to loosely tackle them. It's a jam session for any of you Marvel vs. Capcom 3 players as Dante or jazz musicians, all right? And the first question for our live studio audience, can you discuss a little bit your pathways to partnerships and sponsorships? Neil, you were kind of already there. Why don't you keep us going with how those partnerships get established? You mentioned a whole bunch. How do you approach them? There's going to be some chat later about endemic, non-endemic. Can you sort of define those words for the students on the right-hand side as well?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? From the endemic and non-endemic vernacular, endemic is someone who is very natural and authentic to the space, which would be like PlayStation or Xbox or AMD or folks that are doing and selling products that are very gaming-centric and gaming-related. Non-endemic would be, you know, brands that are adjacent to the space, consumer packaged goods, personal care, Coca-Cola, Old Spice, all those kind of folks that aren't focused on gaming directly, but trying to target that audience. And when we think about the pathways to partnerships and sponsorships, there's one thing that I always say. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last night, David Meltzer, who is a great entrepreneur and businessman. And what we talked about was, as you have a conversation, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's Blacklyte, whether it's Verizon or whoever, is when you sit down with the person who's the manager, the partnerships, the sponsorships, the marketing, is be interested and be interesting. And when I say that is, that seems very natural. But if you're interested, if I say to Alex, you know, what are your goals or what are your targets or what are you guys trying to do from releasing this new haptic lighting that's tied into CS2, he's going to tell me about their strategy and their goals and what the product market fit is going to be. And then that way I can tailor the message and say, hey, you know what? We've got this German HQ that we're building out where our CS2 team is going to play and is going to practice and is going to host boot camps. Then I think this is a very natural fit. instead of trying to fit a square into a round hole, think of what the brand needs. Try to create a conversation where you're not pitching them and frankly annoying them with what you want. Think about what solutions that I could bring to the table that I could probably have 1 + 1 = 3. If you're trying to get a bigger audience, heck, between Toronto Ultra and Koi, we've got 130 million global followers across our teams, our influencers, and our networks. That's a pretty big audience. But when you drill that down to what actually matters, if we're talking about CS2, for an example, okay, maybe we've got 2 million fans, and of those 2 million fans, maybe 5% of them might be open to buying a new desk, chair, or lighting system. Well, let's target those guys with a very tailored, specific message, but more importantly, let's co-invest, let's create activations and experiences that matter, and then let's track the results.
Yeah.
There's got to be a little bit of faith in each other and belief that we'll deliver on it, but then it's all going to come down to metrics and KPIs and deliverables, because I don't ever want to be in a one-sided relationship where I win and he loses or vice versa.
Yeah.
Let's build our brands together. We're a small company. You're a startup that's growing super quickly, but let's have that win together. And I think that's what any relationship needs to be. Big or small, be interested in them, grow together, win together.
Love it. Now, before we head over to you, Tom, I want to ask you, Alex, because you're like king of partnerships right now. I'm interested in your perspective on how you choose who you're going to partner with. Because Neil is talking about the importance of that synergy, that back and forth. But you're a provider of a lot. We've shown pictures of the booth already. How do you determine who to partner with?
I think from the beginning and now it has changed like greatly. Like it's a completely different methodology on how to proceed on this now, because at the very early stage we're small. Like no one knows about us, and as a young brand, no one really trusts us, right? If you just go up to Fnatic and be like, okay, I'm gonna come over here and sponsor you guys and be partners, they'll be like, off. Like, we don't work with little brands. Like, we don't know you guys. Why would you take your shares? So at the very early stage, I think OEM is actually one of the earliest partner that we had. One of the earliest, because they're next door. Literally, like, our office is like 30 seconds walk. So at the early stage, all the partner that we had was everyone that's in our community already. Whoever we already know, the friends of the friends, and then gradually we build trust with them. We see the result. We start doing some other events, doing some activations. From there, people start noticing us, and then like Fnatic came over, Nordwind came over, then we started talking. So at the very early stage, when we pick, you don't really have a choice. You just have to work with wherever you have, and then make it better. And then gradually we filter out some of the good ones, some of the bad ones. Like we keep working with OEM, we drop some of the other partners, but then now when we reach the stage that we at, we have so much people to choose from. Now we have the opportunity, like what Neil said, like we can find the synergy that if we can work together or not. If someone just come in, throw me a contract, be like, okay, here, 200,000, just sign that, and then we'll be partner. I'll be like, no, like we don't do that now. But if you can show me what you can do, okay, more often it's the other way around, eh? Like, when we talk, it's like, what Blacklyte can do for you, like, how are we different from other gaming chair, gaming desk brand? Like, we want to do the activation, we want to do the cool stuff, we want to do the media production, we want to do all this. And then our future partner will be interested in this partnership, and then they will actually give leeways, or they will give more flexibility on how to work.
It sounds like you talk about passion, proximity, and I guess persistence in a way. In that, listen, man, you both got to be equally excited and passionate about at least some kind of shared goal. But that initial proximity, closeness, not just in maybe physical proximity, but in subject matter area.
You need to get some mutual topic. Like if you can't even talk, like for example, let's say if we're gonna do a partnership, we might not play the same game, we might not be in the same field, we might not do the same. We have to do the same thing. There has to be something that we can jump on, and we expand on that. Then you know I'm a good human being. I know you're a good human being. Then we proceed on the partnership. That's what it is.
Amazing. Tom, there was some mention early on about Red Bull, and we were talking about pathways to partnerships and sponsorships. Talk to us about how Fnatic approaches these kinds of relationships?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really interesting topic, to be honest. I think building a little bit on what's already been said, for me, it's kind of an art and a science at the same time.
Okay.
Like on the art side, the really core fundamental thing that you need to figure out is what is the partner looking to achieve? What are they working on? What's their strategy? Because without that information, you're never going to be able to build something that's coherent and that's going to align with what they're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been the first step for us in any conversation, right? We want to try and get as much information from the partner that we're speaking to around what their vision is, what's their 5-10-year plan, what do they want to achieve, and then we can start to figure out what do we have, what are our capabilities that are unique, which is a key point that we'll be able to help them to get there. I think something we've learned over the last year, 2 years, a long time, is essentially it's a very competitive market, right? You've got so many people with a lot of attention, hundreds of millions of fans all over the place.
Yeah.
But the fundamental thing that'll stand out is what is your identity as a partner that you can bring to the table that no one else can. And so I'll move on to Red Bull a little bit in a second, but for Blacklyte specifically, for us, something that was quite unique for us as Fnatic, as an esports team, is we've had an engineering team for quite some time working on hardware.
Yeah.
So what that brings to the table is we've got expertise that not many of our competitors will have that we can bring to the table. And so when we're having a conversation with Alex and the guys at Blacklyte, we can really bring that side of things to the table, as well as the reach, as well as the notoriety, as well as the legacy that we have as a brand. We can also start to talk about, okay, how do we put our foot in the development cycle of your products as well? How do we get our teams and our players to contribute to that, as well as our engineering team and their expertise that they have working in the esports space? I think that's pretty key, and it means that it kind of changes the dynamic of the conversation, because you're not just talking about, okay, am I choosing between 5 of essentially the similar offerings? You want to find one way to stand out compared to everyone else.
It sounds like in that particular scenario, because I've been doing some research on haptics and player performance via chairs, it sounds like you have aggregated data with your team that understands player performance as it ties to even seating arrangement, as well as posture for performance, which is the name of the study, that you can help Alex to understand in his development, so that synergy comes together to essentially develop high performance culture gear. That's like an example of those impactful synergies. It sounds like that's what you described. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Exactly. And Fnatic, one of our really core pillars of the brand has always been performance and driving that forward as much as we can. Esports, has come a long way in the last 20, 25 years. But what we tried to do is almost not emulate, but take things from traditional sports, such as the psychology of competition, right?
Yeah.
Such as how do you put a player in an environment where you're going to bring them out of their shell and bring them to their best possible performance, and that involves everything, including what is their setup, what are the ergonomics when they're playing. These guys play 12 hours a day sometimes, a lot of the time. So if you over the course of a year, they're spending a lot of time sat in a chair, they're spending a lot of time playing with peripherals, they're spending a lot of time with that. So understanding that and going into research around that, we've done a few different studies. We worked with institutions like the New York Institute of Technology, and it's really just figuring out what can we do to get a 1%, 2% break against everyone else in competition, as well as in partnerships. So it's very aligned in that sense.
That percentage is a big deal on the field, man. You know that. Amazing. Akshat, same question for you. You're working with all these companies, Nodwin Games specifically, all these different verticals for esport teams and franchises. How do you negotiate and navigate those partnerships and sponsorships?
So unlike my two friends, I have a different problem. My problem's, I'm both a tournament operator and I'm a media company. Right? But I have no distribution of my own. We all live in the times of Instagram and Twitch and YouTube. So on one side, I have to go ahead and negotiate great media rights for us. Right? Because I'm fundamentally an IP company. And second, I need to go ahead and make sure that media rights are distributed to my partners. Right? So, so think of us as, FIFA making football, but also the National Basketball Association building the NBA. And also building the NFL at the same time.
And filming it.
And
working on distribution. And rights, and player rights.
and then influencers to make, and then content like making Drive to Survive. Right? Because if you don't do that, it just becomes an old people's race with people just racing cars around circles. Right? So for us as a media company, my first problem statement is, who are we talking to? Who's going to watch this? And where are they going to watch this?
That gives you a unique angle on how you approach sponsorships, because there could be back to Neil's point, non-endemic partners that don't really understand what's happening with gaming, but they do understand numbers, they do understand distribution. And that leads me to bridge into a question that's not even here. How are you bridging different fields? Because we already started talking about health and wellness, ergonomics, and technology. How are you bridging these different fields, given that you're in media production as well? Kind of like a Netflix of some sort. How do you navigate that? How do you bring on new partners? How do you convince them to believe?
So this, I call it the 4 ways to go ahead and do this, right? It's first you throw logic. And some people will understand logic.
The way you said that.
Some people will understand logic. I think logic's overrated.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
And I'm going to just drop some really weird ideas here. But they work.
Yeah.
Okay. Second is you take the people who got convinced with logic and you move to the side. And the second is you get brand managers promoted.
Get brand managers promoted. I see where you're going with this. Okay.
Because the brand manager has a shelf life of between 18 months and 36 months before they either get fired, changed to a new project, or promoted.
Okay.
Right? But they control $10 to $100 million of budgets. Right? That's what a brand manager's job is, to spend the company's money into KPIs. Now, if you get that brand manager promoted, you have ensured that you have a perennial cash cow coming to you. That means you need to understand what gets the brand manager promoted.
Yeah.
And brand managers get promoted because one of 3 ways. Number 1, great reach. Number 2, great engagement. Number 3, great sales. And choose your battle. Sometimes you'll not be able to get great sales, but you'll be able to go ahead and say, for example, we have a show called Playground that runs on Amazon. It's got 450 million people watching it. I'll say that again. 450 million people who watch that show.
Yeah.
And that show is Big Brother meets The Voice for gaming.
Y'all got to check that out.
Yeah?
I'm excited about that.
So
you had me at gaming.
And then the brands, and the activity is everyone, you put in influencers, all kind of influencers, beauty, music, gaming, but everyone plays daily tasks as gaming tasks. Finish a round of Contra.
Which one?
Without dying.
Oh, I like this.
Right? So you just throw in random tasks.
Yeah.
But once you build this, you've now got this cohort, and then you take this gaming cohort, and now you take it to a brand. A brand who likes big numbers, right? And then they're like, oh, great, I am Honda. I love this because I can sell motorbikes to young kids because your TG is 72% male who are watching it, and they're 18 to 24. And guess what? They're going to go ahead and buy bikes. And Gillette, because everyone's going to be shaving for the first time. So now you've got these 2 cohorts that care about gaming.
Yeah.
And these are traditional Procter & Gamble and Honda.
Yeah.
And then you put it on television and you put it on different shows. So one of our shows runs on linear television. And who's want to watch linear television? The parents are.
Yeah.
We own the World Championship of Chess was produced by us, where Ding Liren and a guy from China and a guy from India competed.
Yeah.
We had 300,000 concurrent people watching it on YouTube.
Wow.
Right? So when you go take these cohorts of media, you want to go ahead and say, where are young people there? And unlike the West, most of the time, either people are playing on this or consuming content on this. So most of my esports and my content is designed for this, not for Twitch, not for PC. PC is good, but not as important because most of the young people in emerging markets typically would never have seen a PC before. Their first thing would actually be maybe a phone and then a laptop. That's their graduation cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Because power goes away. People need to be portable. Parents will never buy a dedicated amount because this is not the developed world you're talking about. So to us, partnerships is about figuring out media. That's one partners for us. Brands, but brands that want the media for 400 million people, 500 million people.
Amazing.
Right? That's the problem statement which we face.
Okay.
For us, we've always seen our endemic, as we talked about AMD, we've talked about Counter-Strike, we've talked about chess. My endemic is telecom operators,
Yeah.
is Qualcomm, is
That's
Google,
right.
Android.
All the folks behind. Actually, that seems endemic based on what you're talking about.
So the definition of the word endemic is actually
Relative.
relative to
I
different places.
like that. I like that. Okay, here's a challenge for all of you. I've been spearheading this idea for a while, all right? You're talking about this crossover between partnerships, and you're having to show some kind of return on investment. I've always had this idea of a partnership between Capcom and Honda.
Ah, okay.
You might say, why? Well, maybe they could market electric cars to fighting game players who have an affinity with E-Honda, whose full name is Edmund Honda. And there's also a rental company in the States called Edmunds. How would you tackle that kind of approach? And in terms of researching how you would go about executing that to see whether or not it's even viable, how do you go about these kinds of, you're talking about Qualcomm, you're talking about AMD, how do you choose?
Well, I would actually go take, and this I'm just winging it.
Yeah.
I would go and take what the American Army did. So America's Army went and took the Predator drone program and actually went and made qualifiers of that in a flight simulator.
Oh.
So what I would go ahead and do is go to Capcom and Honda and said, in the future, your joysticks would change. This is not how the vehicle is going to be. That's how the vehicle is going to be. And if your vehicle's like this, guess who's the best ambidextrous people who are going to be going in.
Edmund Honda players, I love that. Okay.
Down, up, yeah?
Down, up, the Konami code. So, in each of your said disciplines, how do you build, and I'll start with you, Neil, sustainable esports ecosystems? We know that, we like to say sometimes the size of the football will change. We were talking about 2K, and sometimes the shot consistency shifts pretty much every season. How do you build a sustainable ecosystem, either including or outside of the publisher?
Well, for us, it's with the publisher. We work very closely with them. What I would say now, after 10 years in this industry, is you've got to know your product. And when I say know your product, that really means know your audience. So when we look at a team, people would say, you should be in, pick a game, doesn't matter, NBA 2K. But if we look at the economics of NBA 2K and we don't see that there's a microtransaction revenue, MTX, skins, and we don't see that there's high demand for sponsorship because the audience might not be of broad reach. So when you talk about media, like Akshat was saying, is there enough reach and distribution that brands are going to need to be associated with it to get their product out? Or is there a fit to growing our audience and engagement? So once we tick off all four of those metrics, we can make a determination of the economic impact. Is it something that can be self-sustainable? And is it something that can have a path to profitability? Or is it something that we need to invest in that we look in 3 years or 5 years' time will become profitable? And any of those different buckets we look at from a business, and we've got probably 80% of our business that needs to be safe, needs to be protected. Conserving capital in this economy is most important. Having a path to profitability for us as a public company is very important. The numbers are out there. We report them every quarter. Everyone can see if we're up or down or sideways, flat, whatever it may be. So we need to understand what the economic impact is in the short term and have a model that can show us what the long term is going to look like. And one thing I'll talk about that we haven't really discussed openly is what Overactive Media became when we launched. This was Overwatch, Toronto Defiant, one of the most beloved Overwatch teams in the world. And the way that the system was built, there was a lot of very big, lofty aspirations that didn't come to pass. And as a result, the profitability never followed. The audience never grew to the size that we had hoped. So that we pivoted and evolved into OWCS. This year, Toronto Defiant was the back-to-back-to-back-to-back North American stage champions for OWCS. And we came second at the Esports World Cup. But when you sit down at the end of the day and you look at your business plan and your model, we still lost a lot of money on that team. And as a result, with the evolving model, we didn't see a path to profitability in the new system. And we opted out from applying to join OWCS going forward. Now, fans were up in arms and saying, you know, we love your team. Why would you do this? It's like, economically, the publisher isn't there to support it. The audience isn't there to demand it, and by demand I mean buy the products of sponsors who want to get involved.
Yeah.
And as a result, we can't float training facilities, heavy contracts, travel, etc. to the players, so we had to let it go. So when we look at building all of this, creating sustainable esports is a very tough thing. We do real revenue. You can see it all. It's out there. It's public. We'll do $20 million in revenue from a combination of MTX and from partnerships. But at the end of the day, we look at everything, and we're a very frugal company.
Yeah.
We've got to break even. We've got to make money.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of being in business.
Yeah.
But Neil, a question for you. Because you've been hinting a little bit about new headquarters in Germany.
Yes.
And Adam actually got a couple questions in the chat
Okay.
2 days ago.
Yeah.
If you remember.
I do remember.
With your model, with the calculation that you have, what's your take on Counter-Strike?
We love Counter-Strike.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing with Counter-Strike. It is feast or famine. Those top 20, now top 32 in the world, they feast.
Yeah.
Everybody, you come top 33, if you come 33rd and beyond, and you don't make a major, that's a heavy investment. That's a sunk cost.
Yes.
Because all the money comes from making the majors.
Yes.
We are reevaluating our Counter-Strike strategy. We want to be in Counter-Strike. We are committed to Counter-Strike, but it's got to be the right plan with the right players in the right region, and we're willing to make an investment. We don't look at it as a one-year commitment.
Yeah.
We look at it as where do we want to be in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years?
Yeah.
And we will be in Counter-Strike. When and how and what that looks like, I don't know. I live in Toronto, so I have a bias towards North America.
Yeah.
I don't know what Adam said, but we want to be in Counter-Strike. We love that game, and it's probably one of the biggest legacy titles in gaming and esports. So look for Koi or Toronto Ultra to be in Counter-Strike.
Last time, Ravi from Blast, like they were saying, okay, after the show, I'm gonna talk you into it. You're gonna have a Counter-Strike team.
Yeah.
And I think Fnatic knows a lot about Counter-Strike too. So
Yeah.
they could probably tell you something about whatever they see in the Counter-Strikes.
Yeah, well, it's one of those games where it's been around for such a long time. It has a very, very passionate audience, like very engaged audience. That's sometimes the thing with different games is it can ebb and flow quite a lot, especially in the current environment where you've got something new come out every couple of weeks. Like we've seen Marvel Rivals suddenly explode. Like you've got indie game devs, which could be one guy or girl in their room, make a game, and suddenly it explodes on Steam. There's this whole like scenario where there's a lot of uncertainty with the stability of like a lot of the game environment, right? But there are some that are very consistent, and like for us, Counter-Strike has been our legacy. Like one of our co-founders, Khan, Counter-Strike world champion essentially. So really, it's something that we spending a lot of time thinking about the sustainability of, which is an interesting topic in Counter-Strike because, as you say, it's feast or famine, and you need to make a calculated bet as to how much are you going to invest versus how much do you expect to return, and that's it could be literally. A millimeter to the left on one round in one Counter-Strike game will be the difference between feasting or between famine.
Oh my goodness.
So sometimes, we're watching some of those games and there's a little bit of sweat coming down your brow, thinking, okay, have we got the right calculations there? But it's just such an important game for the ecosystem that I think that regardless of the fact that there can be a disparity between the highest teams that are investing the most and teams that are still in top 32 but can make it work, I think it's like if you continue to build that ecosystem in the way that it's been done, there's a lot of promise, and they're one of the publishers that are providing the most support for teams. And that's kind of how, from a brand partnerships perspective, I think about the publisher's involvement is about certainty or uncertainty. So what it gives us and my team is that if we have a publisher and a title, because it's the same for us, we think about each title individually, we have one where we're getting more support from the publisher side in terms of the revenue, then it means that we have more flexibility on the brand partnerships and the sponsorship side to get more creative and to have a little more freedom around who we work with and things like that. So I think really the goal is probably a balance of both, because the publishers have their own businesses to run, but at the same time, if they want to continue growing the scene, traditional sports is stable because of the amount of investment they get through the media rights that they sell, right? But we need to find a way to be very symbiotic between the publishers and the teams, because we won't survive without each other.
Exactly.
One thing I'll say just quickly is when you look at it, I say know your product, know your audience.
Yeah.
5 years ago, 6 years ago, everybody wanted to be everything to everyone. They wanted to be global.
Yep.
And all of these brands were saying, we've got 400 million global fans, but really they didn't have a home base, or they didn't have a community. They might have had these transient fans who joined them on Twitter or Facebook or Discord or Twitch. But when we look at what we're doing in Madrid, in Toronto, and to a lesser extent in Berlin, When you go to Madrid, that's Koi HQ. People live, breathe, eat, sleep Koi. We sold out a venue, I don't know what it was, 6,000, 7,000 people for a December show match against Carmen Corp, and those fans were passionate and diehard. When we show up for a Toronto Ultra Major for Call of Duty, it sells out in the first day or couple of days. That's 10,000 fans over 2 or 3 days, 4 days, I guess, that show up to support our team. And there's regional, local, provincial for us, or state in the U.S., and then national. You've got to own something and have your hooks in, because community is what everybody wants to be a part of, and that's how you grow bigger fandom.
Well, I'm going to be saying something fairly controversial.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it.
Excited.
And look, Counter-Strike is bankrupt as an ecosystem without betting.
Yes. Yes.
Okay? But that's not evil.
Yeah.
Every sport on planet Earth, and I mark my words, every sport on planet Earth is bankrupt without betting money. If you take sport and you put it on television, English Premier League, for the longest time, had Chinese betting companies that were sponsoring it, and that's the reason it was there, right? Boxing,
Oh.
you don't even want to go out and start, right?
Yeah.
But we're in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
This is legal here.
Yeah.
Then the question is not the ethics of it, just the jurisdiction of it, right? So betting is legal here. You can come, and Evo happens here for a reason, because you can actually take entry fees from players to go out and play a tournament. People pay $50 to go out and play an Evo tournament, and there's buy-in, but that's like poker, right? I have a buy-in again. I think we need to understand either the publisher, either we are a sport without a publisher, and the publisher says, you know what, I'm just the game developer. You guys do you. You go figure out what's there, and you're a sport. But then sports rules apply. Or we are a game. And that's fine too. And then the publisher gives you in-game skins and this. But one of those two responsibilities needs to come in.
Yeah.
If you're a sport, then sports rules, media rights, betting, sponsorship, ticketing, all need to come in. Or you're a game, and you are run by a publisher. And then the publisher needs to take that accountability, because they make money from people playing the game. And they get more money from going in. And like everything in life, it's not unilateral, right? You'll always have different, you have games like PUBG Mobile and Honor of Kings that are very different models than Counter-Strike and Overwatch and Valorant and League of Legends. So, yeah, we need to go ahead and say the definition of the ecosystem. There's just 4 players. For everyone who's watching, there's a player, there's a team, there's a tournament organizer, and then there is the publisher. These are the 4 people who live in that ecosystem. Everyone is an ancillary who does something else around it, right? Then you'll become sponsors, media rights, etc. But these are the 4 people who are putting stuff together. If you don't make each of them sustainable, you're broken.
So this is what I heard, summary of all 3 of you. My next question, which is not here. You all seem to be describing the business of your setting experience in esports, a black box that is hidden from audiences. What do I mean? Everything you just described, the players, as you saw in the chat the other day, they were upset, but they didn't understand this. How do you get your fans to understand that this is a business, or is that not a goal at all? Because them understanding this black box that was just described might have them say, oh, that's why we can't have Counter-Strike right now. You didn't say never, you said right now.
Well, I actually think it's really interesting, and Adam probably touched on this when he was here. We believe in radical transparency with our fans. Sometimes to a fault. You know, Adam's Twitter is amazing. He is the most transparent CEO, I think, in the history of the world. And the fans love him. When he shows up in Madrid, he's a bigger celebrity than half the players. I remember walking around, and people were stopping him for selfies, for autographs. It was amazing because they respect him, they admire him, and they love what he's building. So I look at that, and you know, it's a lesson for me of sometimes you have information that you're privy to that others aren't. But if that information can help provide context to a broader audience, and you can control the narrative and the messaging, and you can share enough that empowers them that they are a part of the team, they are a part of that community, they are a part of your, let's call it a family, then they're going to love you for it, right or wrong. Because I know that our team makes a lot of decisions that are tough, but they're critical to make, and right or wrong, there's a reason why they made them.
Oh, yes.
So as long as they can share that information is important. Our Counter-Strike team, I don't have all the information, but I know that Fernando Pique, who is our Chief Strategy Officer, just 2 days ago, he did an AMA with the Spanish community where they were up in arms about us allowing our CS2 players to go search for new contracts and new teams. And he went up and he faced the firing squad. He said, ask me whatever you want. I will give you the answers that I can give you. And that level of transparency is so commendable. But I do want our players and our fans and our partners to recognize that this is a business.
Yeah.
When Alex and I sit down to have a negotiation, there's always kind of some back and forth. But we need to know that I need to deliver for him because he's got goals and targets. But I also need to make sure I'm entering a relationship and a partnership that can be good for my team, my business, and at the end of the day, my shareholders.
Yeah.
Again, controversy time.
Yeah, because I was going to follow up with what you said. I was very excited, but go ahead.
Lesson in life. Before making all of these companies, I used to be an investment banker, right? The business of business is not always the same. And that comes to the basic question of a thing called valuations, right? And valuations are a thing. For most of us, wealth is created through valuations and not profit, right? For people make wealth with shares, not salaries. And that's an important lesson to have. That's why stock options are a thing. That's why, and if you look at valuations, the running joke is 5 CXOs sit in a room. One's a CEO, one's a chief marketing officer, one's a chief technology officer, one's a chief operations officer, and one's a chief financial officer. And they're like, guys, in that room behind this wall are some investors. But we don't know what they want. So he's like, okay, so what are we going to do? So he's like, okay, first you go up. He's like, you're the chief marketing officer. He's like, what is your valuation based on? Revenue. Like, great, we're going to run revenue. And then suddenly that room is like, no revenue. Now there's like, okay, engineering lead. What does that want? Headcount. And they're like, okay, it's going to be based on headcount. And then that's great. Then my turn comes, and I'm a chief operations officer. And then it's like, what is this based on? Oh, efficiencies. So it's like, then the CFO comes on board. He's like, my turn, profit, right? So, and then the CEO is like, okay, the cycle changes. And we see this, which is there. So esports, for the longest time, in 10 years ago, was only based on revenue.
Yeah.
Then it was based on players and teams. And then it was based on influencers and reach. And then it was based on profitability when companies went public and they tanked, right? So people keep on looking for this thing called valuations. And this will change. Right now, it's about profitability.
Yeah.
Mark my words, in 2 years' time, it's not profitability.
Yeah.
And so you survive these seismic events, and then you have a new valuation metric. And I don't know what it's going to be. But whoever survives gets creds, right? So
Yeah.
once you level up, you're fine, because in the next cycle, you're like,
You're
I
ready.
survived it, I'm good, I'm legitimate, and that gives you chops.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If I could just add to that, it's really interesting because
Yeah.
I think that the point is, at different times and depending on the different person, it's always what fans want and what investors want. It's always going to be different.
Yeah,
And something that I think we think about a lot is how can we be evergreen, because there are ebbs and flows. You know, esports winter is a big topic, but in reality, each individual team will also have their own performance. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And if we have 10 teams, every single team is a world champion, no one's gonna, everyone's fine with it. Okay, no one's gonna question anything further
The
than that.
industry's dead.
We're dominant, right? But the reality is, it's like game specific, and then it's also specific based on different timelines. And so, if we have a game that does incredibly well, 2 years ago we won 3 out of 4 international tournaments in Valorant. Massive spike in fandom. We were an incredibly popular team globally. How do we use that momentum to create something that's going to be evergreen within that fandom? How do we give value to fans on a longer term basis so that they stick with us through the bad times? And it's almost like taking advantage of those highs, and if you have this value that you're giving to fans as a general basis, they start to although transparency is vitally important, they will start to think less about, maybe the bad times, and they'll remember that, okay, we're still getting value from this organization in some shape or form. We're going to stick with them, and we're going to ride the wave. And we've seen it a lot with League of Legends. We've been in that title for a long time. We've gone through really high highs. We've gone through some pretty low lows.
Yeah.
How do we respond to that audience specifically and what they look for, and provide some sort of evergreen value? And I think that it's not just an esports problem. It's also a traditional sports problem. It's a brand problem.
Yeah.
Some football teams are incredibly good at this, providing long-term value and thinking about what can you do outside of just the game, just on the pitch, that fans are going to care about.
Yeah.
How do you build that strategy that helps you weather the storm when things aren't going great?
One phenomenon that we start noticing is every time, because when you were saying like you guys were winning 3 out of 4 world championship titles, like how do you keep that momentum going? You have to change the direction because you're not going to win the next title.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're going to win or not. It's not even a 50-50 chance. I don't even know how many teams in the play, right? So one thing that we found is the top players will always burn up the next trend. Kind of like you were saying, you don't know what's going to happen for the next 2 years. Right now, we're in the profitability. Why? We were in the winter, and everyone was shutting down. It was post-pandemic. Everyone started going out of the house. So the only company that's going to survive is the one that have the profit.
Yeah.
But we're passing that now. Like everyone starts surviving. Another 2 years pass, everyone knows, it's already stabilized. Okay, what's the next now? Is it someone who utilize the algorithm? Is it someone who utilize some type of new format? We don't know yet. But on the team side, on the player side, we saw what happened with G2. That was a very, very prime example. G2 is the one that pushing social media so hard that their fan base went crazy. And then the action of G2 brought up so many teams follow up whatever their footstep is going up, and even brands. Like, I don't know if you saw Razer's social media. It's very interesting. Razer is doing all type of gray area on their official social sites.
Wow.
But they're hitting like 2 million likes on a single post, and they sells. But all that traces back to how G2 was playing, because they were the one playing all the memes, they were the one doing all the filming, and they started going deep in China social media, where they don't even go China that often, but they make like millions of profits just from the fan base. And now this major in Shanghai, I was there. A lot of companies came to me, came to us, came to Blacklyte actually, to be like, okay, can you guys actually do the social media for us in China? Like we want to capture that traffic too, but they don't know how to do it. But even if they start right now, they're not gonna get the traffic that G2 got. Like they don't have the base, they don't have the history, and they don't have the timing that G2 had at the time. Something new has to come out. But we know in 2025, from what we know, there's at least 3 top-tier games happening in China. IEM is in Chengdu.
Yes.
We know Worlds is in Chengdu too. Bloss is hosting at least 1 or 2 tournaments in China or in Hong Kong, which is part of China. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we know there's a lot of movement in China, and a lot of big team organizers, publishers are doing big things. So I feel like there's going to be something, but we just don't know who's going to be the next player yet. So if Fnatic wins the next title, just be prepared and just gotta go for it. Like you guys get the traffic, you guys gotta lead it, and you guys gotta change it. But if you don't convert that, the chance is gonna fall onto the next one.
That's interesting. So who's ever dunking during the season controls
that's an interesting
the
word.
overarching next set of history in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
But isn't that sport?
Yeah,
Think
it's
about it,
always like that.
Chicago Bulls.
That's all of history.
Tiki-taka with Barcelona is there, right? And when people change, that legacy just moves
Exactly.
But I wanted to get back to something you were saying, Akshat, with this idea of publisher and operating as a sport. Does one of them have to win? Is there an optimal scenario per game? How do you see that resolving itself, right? This idea of, are you going to be able to be bet on, come to Vegas, but we can't because, let's take an example, like Nintendo's not interested in having Super Smash Bros. Associated in any way with anything
because that's
negative.
wrong for their brand.
Correct.
Right? Nintendo
Correct.
is about little kids going and playing video games.
Correct.
Right? And that's their core TG. And never hurt your core TG.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
like otherwise you're the schmucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you just be clear. Counter-Strike is played by people who are above 25. It's an older game.
Yep.
It's right. That's alcohol for above 25.
Yes.
Nearly everywhere in the world is okay.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with alcohol, and that's why Pernod Ricard actually does work with Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do that with amiibos.
Yes, correct.
Right.
So the question was, should there be separate strategies for either domain?
I think every game needs a separate
I
strategy.
like that.
Because think of it if you're the Olympics, the heptathlon, the figure skating, and let's just throw something crazy.
Triple jump.
Triple
Javelin.
jump. Won't ever have the same sponsors.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe Nike.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. That's it, right?
Yep.
And that also, I'd be careful about doing it because you don't want to go. I actually don't think Nike sponsors figure skating.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't watch figure skating.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's different sports.
Yeah.
Counter-Strike is not Fortnite.
Yep.
Is not PUBG Mobile. Is
Correct.
not Dota 2.
Correct.
Right?
So my follow-up question to that is, you're doing a genius way of extracting what it could be for each game. Who's to do that? The publisher or organizations such as yourselves, who in some ways kind of control the narrative? Because what I see was games were doing their thing, fans came together and be like, yo, we love it. And you guys were like, how much do you love it? This much? And then the publishers are like, yo, they really love it this much. Oh, no, but don't do it in that way. But what? You weren't there when it was getting picked up. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's up to the organizations, the teams, because the reality is the publishers are somewhat focused on what they're doing, and there are exceptions to that, like Riot expanding out of League of Legends into a load of other titles.
Yeah.
But then if you look at how the business is built, I'm pretty sure League of Legends and Valorant teams are pretty separate. You could probably split them apart, and they'd still function independently. I think the thing that's interesting, and we get a lot of comparisons with traditional sport, is that if you look at, let's say, Chelsea Football Club, right? They have the ability to just focus on what they're great at, and it's one single thing, it's one single group of audience, and what that means is they can focus 100% of their energy towards that. The thing that can be a little difficult in esports is we have 10 teams. What we have to do is split all of our resources across 10 different games, 10 different communities. Some might be 25 years old, some might be 16, some might be older.
Yeah.
Some live in some certain countries, some live in others. They speak different languages. They react differently to brands being involved, to what type of marketing you're doing, and so it is a difficult balance, and what realistically you have to do is then identify, okay, what are the things that are consistent across all of them that they'll enjoy, like performance we mentioned before, but then you go into each individual one and you add intricate details that will mean that audience will then appreciate you because they feel heard and they feel seen and they feel like you understand what they're looking for, and that's not going to be the same between Valorant and Counter-Strike, and it takes the time, you know.
Oh, and there's also greed.
Okay, let's go.
Greed is good.
Yeah.
I'm a guy who makes money, right? So, so greed is good, but don't go away from which is there. So Red Bull is a great example, and we've not talked about which is there. I think most sports teams in the world are not multi-sports teams. They're not. Like, you don't see the Yankees own a Formula One team, right? It's just not there. Esports actually have multidisciplinary teams, which is good because you can go ahead and say, hey, it's esports, but it's actually different. So I actually like what I call focus. There will be short-term opportunities from publishers who want to go ahead and give certain opportunities for games that will last between 2 and 4 years to go ahead and have tactical plays. But strategically, you go down this path this is who we are. So Fnatic, because of Karn, was always a great Counter-Strike team. Then Dota came in, and they made a huge amount of investment, and they started going really deep in the international. So they became a Dota team. And then the time came to go ahead and look at Overwatch and other games that are there, and then franchising came in. And that's actually good because some of them got that franchise, and that core base of your core audience became very, very good. But distractions will always be there. I actually like to go ahead and say, stick to your core and dabble in opportunistic, which is there. But because, it's nice. Like, you can always go ahead and cut ribbons at shops to go ahead and make some money. But that's not your job. Your job's to play the game and to be great at the game. So closing that comment, if you have opportunities as teams to go be multidisciplinary, do. But take care of your core audience. Because if they abandon you, you're worthless.
Cam and Mace will say, keep the first thing the first thing. Let's move on. How do you all balance both innovation as well as evolution? What do I mean? It's not necessarily innovation versus evolution, but Tom, you were saying earlier on that you want to be able to experiment with something new, but it can't yet jeopardize the foundation.
Yep.
How do you balance that and choose what to take a risk on? How far of a risk? Talk about when you're experimenting with forging forward. You were also mentioning green evergreen.
Yep.
And talking about how you'll need to maintain that in some way, shape, or form. How much does innovation lead to that by mobilizing fan bases, which we'll probably talk about, but talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's all about balance, and it's all about, sticking to your core is vitally important because it's very easy to get lost. And the reality is sometimes when you're innovating, it's not you're not going to see the results and the fruit of that labor for maybe some time. And so you need to establish a foundation where you're secure and you have the freedom and the confidence to go out and maybe spend 20% of your resources finding something, and you could go in one direction and it might lead you nowhere, but that's fine because you've got your 80% that you've secured in. And then what that opens up is a whole world of opportunity, right? AI is obviously a topic, but there are so many things you can go into. For example, an esports team, we could choose to go into a new title, right? Then you look at, okay, what is the evaluation? What's the opportunity within that title? I think Game Changers has been an incredible evolution of esports, like female esports players, and that is an innovation in itself because it's something that's new, but it's also an evolution of how esports is being played. And that's the kind of thing that it's not going to be an immediate reaction. What you're doing is you're betting that this is going to become a huge thing in the future, and you want to be the first to it. With the example of G2 in China, because if you're not the first to it, then suddenly you're just following along the coattails of the people that did the actual innovation. And it can be a little dangerous. We know the history of Apple and actually not being innovators. They're just always second to the mark. So sometimes you need people to pave the way, but that's just about having a calculated guess. Something that on the evolution side is interesting for us is it doesn't always have to be forward at full speed. So we're a UK organization, like, at heart, right? Well, our headquarters is in the UK. Sam spent a lot of his time in the UK. But what we did is we've been around for such a long time, we expanded globally at a very fast rate, and we started to get teams across Europe. We started to get teams in APAC as well. But what that meant is now we're in that global state, but what we can do, an evolution of what we can do is coming back to our core to the point before, and investing even more of our innovation into the UK. And that's something we're doing with Red Bull. We're working with Red Bull UK, and we're trying to figure out, we see an opportunity within that market where it's not being served correctly. And so an evolution could be forward, but it could also be looking at our past and trying to reignite that fandom that we know exists in the UK as well.
Nice. Shout out to Jackson and Red Bull UK. All right, so.
Shout out to Jackson.
He helped us work at TMU to set up the Red Bull Gaming Hub. So
Yep, working with Jackson as well. Yeah. Great guy.
All right. Follow-ups for innovation and evolution. Neil Duffy, you've got dedicated fan bases, as you mentioned. You mentioned the CES pulling out to pause to find out when and where it's time to innovate. Talk to us a little bit about how you're selecting, how you're choosing, and when, if ever, you're going to have a Street Fighter team.
Well,
that's a selfish question.
I love Street Fighter, and Toronto Ultras partnered with Get On My Level, which has Street Fighter tournament and Smash tournament, Guilty Gear, and Blacklyte's going to come and support us this year. So I guess that might be an unveiling. We haven't announced that yet, so that might be a world exclusive you guys just got.
I didn't say anything.
Blacklyte coming to Gobble, so we love that. When we think of innovation, we think of it in a few different ways. It's listen to your fans, understand your fans, follow the trends. And the best example of that is, G2 is a good example of what they did around meme culture, social media. They're the best in the world. They were the best. They had that voice. They were very, very impressive. But what they were slow on, because they didn't need to be, was co-streaming, right? So when you look at the LEC, for example, the co-streams are dominated by other groups, like us, right? We've got Ebuy, and his co-stream outpaces even the LEC stream. Kometo and what he does with Carmen Corp and the guys at Heretics. And the co-streams are now what social media was 5 years ago.
Yep.
And we look at that and we go all in on co-streams. And we try to, Ebuy is a force to be, he's a force unto himself, right? He's the biggest co-streamer probably on the planet. But we also want to raise up other guys, whether it's Sergio Farah or Konecro or all of these other guys that if anything ever happened to Ibai or he was sick or he took a day off or he took a sabbatical, we've got other people ready and waiting. So it's being positioned to innovate and evolve and just understand what the audience wants. They want to be closely associated with the influencers, the creators that they know, that they like, that they understand, and that most importantly, share the exact same passion for the team that they do. You see these guys win, loss, they're upset, they're happy, they're going mental on social if our team loses, they're joyous and crying if the team wins and qualifies for Worlds like we've done 5 years in a row. So I think when we look at evolution, we dig deep into our audience, we dig deep into our customer segment by game. So League of Legends, very different than Call of Duty. Call of Duty, very different than Valorant and Counter-Strike. So we try to understand that audience and just try to make quick decisions, move fast. If it works, stick with it. If it doesn't, let it go and move on.
You've managed to mind read one of our future questions, so I hopped to it. And we're talking about approaches to media production in said disciplines. Akshat, I'm going to start with you because you're essentially running a media production company. How do you go about allocating resources, prioritizing, and what's your overall strategy in your media production approaches to esports?
Well, there's why media production. It's actually a good segue from the last segment to this one. So the definition of the two words for us, and I'm going to segue from there, is what is innovation and what is evolution is important. So evolution for us is more permanent, right? You can't rescind evolution.
Yeah, you can't
de-evolve.
devolve.
Right? So, but innovation is tactical. So you can innovate but innovation has to have a purpose, otherwise it's just mutations, right? So you innovate for growth or you innovate for efficiency, right? Hey, can I put AI? For what purpose? You want to reduce costs? You want to go ahead and increase reach? You want to have time to market that's faster? You want to do more with less? Or do you just want to go ahead and lay off people? And they're all good answers, but innovation needs to have a purpose, right? Innovation is also experimentation, where you go ahead and say, hey, can I go and in a game on PUBG Mobile, I typically go ahead and grab everyone's screen. Can I go ahead and put a heart rate monitor to go ahead and actually see how fast someone's heart is beating when they're actually going and doing it? And then players push back against it because players want nothing to go ahead and put on their bodies because that's what sportsmen do.
Yeah.
Can that be in the seat of the chair? Right? Maybe the seat of the chair that you actually sit on goes and does a heart rate monitor for you. And it tells you as you're getting towards final circle, as you get towards the last clutch round, it's Jordan syncing the buzzer, right?
Yeah.
So how's his heart going? Now, interestingly, you can now take that innovation and now go to Red Bull, since we like talking about them, and say Red Bull gives you wings. Right? That's innovation going to evolution. And if Red Bull says, that's awesome, that's going to be a product line that we are actually not now going to go ahead and do with Blacklyte, that's evolution.
Yep.
You just pitched something. Yo, how do you
I
feel
know.
about that?
I'm going to start doing some heart monitoring in the bump pad now.
Because they can't stop that one.
Yeah.
They can say, I don't want this, my hand hurts. I can't move my hand this way.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Right? Yeah. So that's the difference between innovation and evolution. And we want to go ahead and do that in broadcast technology, right? So because for me, the ability to go ahead and be a fly on the wall when you're actually going and doing broadcast is important. First down in NFL lets you see a line. That yellow line doesn't exist. It's just on broadcast, right? In Counter-Strike, the sill out, it doesn't exist when you play. A lot of people go out and say, when I'm starting playing Counter-Strike, it's like, but I couldn't see the guy when I used to see Counter-Strike. Where's the outline? Like now you don't see it.
No, that's not.
Right? But that's how you learn. Anything that can go and make more watchers than players of a game makes broadcast sense for us. That's, to us, evolution. Because if we are not bigger than the gamer base of the game, then the publisher will always be in strength. And that's fine. but then you are in that ecosystem and you're a subset of that ecosystem. It's pretty much like a stock derivative which is there. So there's a primary stock, the game, and you're a future and option sitting down there.
Yeah.
But if you're bigger than there, then the game publisher loves you. And for a media broadcasting and a tournament operator like me, that's extremely important, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not bigger than the game, then I will always want to go ahead and say, hey, publisher, give me some money to do this. But if I'm bigger, I can now go to the publisher and say, and the publisher comes to me and says, can you help me get more players? Because that's what the publisher cares about, right? More gamers spending more money in the game. And I'm not a publisher. I'm a media company. So anything that to us leads experimentation to innovation, leading to long-term evolution, that's the purpose.
Amazing. I have a summary. Tom, after you.
It's an interesting one for us because we're so focused on storytelling, right, around the teams, because it's the story as old as time, kind of success coming from the bottom, getting to the top, competing on the biggest stages. Redemption is a big thing with the ups and downs, and so there are so many different ways that esports has done that over the years. There are series that I used to watch back in the early 2010s, where it's like YouTube following League of Legends players around back in the day, where they just lived in an apartment in Berlin all together, and they just went to the studio and played games, and it was such a small thing. And now we've got to the point where we're having World's Finals at the O2 Arena, selling out in seconds, and it's changed a lot over the course of that time. And what the core that we've always had is how do we tell the story to the fans in a way that is going to keep them engaged. But the thing that's changing the most at the moment is not the story, it's the channel and the way that you're actually approaching and communicating that story. And so if you don't evolve through that, it can be problematic. So it's not anymore just about how do we create a series that's like Drive to Survive-esque or with like VOD on YouTube. How do we condense that into loads of different short form video pieces that's going to bring new people towards us? Because the reality is there's a pretty decent chance that people that are watching those long form series are the hardcore fans that have been with us for a long time. But what happens if you put some of a snippet of that is really engaging onto a TikTok, and then that goes viral, and suddenly you're accessing not 100% of your existing fans, you're accessing 10% of your existing fans, and 90% of the rest are new potential fans that you could then try and get into the ecosystem and then get them that way. So what's developing for us is, yes, we want to continue telling the story and leading the way in that sense, but then it's how do we innovate in the way that that's delivered to the fan, and how do we find ways to not just tell the same story to the same people, but tell a story to new people that might not have otherwise seen it. And we've seen things like Arcane, right, with Riot, another example. It's like what they're doing there is they're bringing people that wouldn't have otherwise been interested or cared about League of Legends. And I'm sure there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world that don't even know it's a game, that just watch the show. And so how do we try and find areas where we've got a little bit of crossover that we can take advantage of, and then get people interested that wouldn't have otherwise been interested in the first place? I think that's really the tricky part for us. And the people that manage to do that successfully and expand their fan base the most are going to benefit from it in a big way, for sure.
Sounds like the three of you, and you as well, have in common the theme of educating. Because in order to bring in new fans, you have to educate people about how, it's a game, but it's not really about the game. It's about the stories. It's about where you can see yourself. It's about a new area in which, hey, I didn't know but you can come and hang out with us in our stadium when we have a games night, and just bring your parents and come and show them what this is all about. How much of that as a responsibility have you thought of in terms of, actually, you're in some ways, and I'm accusing you of this, educators. You're educating the population about what you do, the stories behind your fans. How much of that bleeds into your strategy for accessing communities?
I think for me, as an educator, it starts with the brands that we work with. It's the very first step. When we go into a company, I've spent a lot of time talking to brands that are non-endemic. So they really have no idea a lot of them have no idea what gaming is about. And the reference they have is like, my niece or nephew plays Fortnite. Right, so you go in, and that's the very first step for me, is like, I've got to educate one person. And if I can convince that one person that gaming and esports is a huge thing, that becomes my advocate, and then that spreads, and we create a partnership. And then with that partnership, we have the resources, and we have the ability to find a way to communicate that education to the rest of their existing fan base. Like, if you look at Arcane is one example, but in a brand partnership that was really interesting to me was LV and the World, League of Legends Worlds a few years ago, Louis Vuitton. Yeah. Completely out of the blue for a lot of people, but it's one of those things where they managed to find a connection between the two brands that made sense, and they're educating the Louis Vuitton audience about what League of Legends is, and that just opens up so many doors. So I think it's a little bit of sometimes a high barrier of entry to get into esports, and it depends on the game. Like if you take someone to watch League of Legends, it's going to take a while to really figure out what's going on. And so there are some games that are easier than others, but at its heart, it's kind of our job to educate the older generation around the benefits, because that's how we're going to get it in the short term. In the long term, we're going to have kids growing up in this environment. We've got like 90% of teenagers play games in some shape or form. And so it's then generationally going to change, and it means that there's less education, and it's more about capitalizing on the awareness.
I read somewhere that the LV trophy case for Worlds took roughly 800 human hours in an interview I did a long time ago. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Spectacular. All right. Go ahead, educator.
So, look, to us, education's about two, again, different objectives. I think we are a young country. Average age is about 27, but becoming 25 in about 2 years, 3 years' time. So, very young people. So our problem was not educating young people. Every single person in the country of India who's young and has a smartphone is a gamer. Right? That's not the problem statement anymore. The problem statement is how do you take the stigma away from it, saying you play video games all the time. Right? To me, then who are you educating became a question of it's the parent.
Yeah.
How do you educate parents?
Yeah.
So first you take the stigma away. So we chose chess. So chess is pretty much a video game, right? Think about it. You're playing on a computer, you're playing on a device or a computer against another gamer somewhere in the world, or most probably a bot that you're playing against. And only when you have a LAN tournament is when you actually sit together, is where you play over the board. But otherwise, you're just playing online. But chess is considered cool. People think that if their kid plays chess, their kid is smart. So if a kid plays chess for 10 hours a day, parents think that this is cool.
Yeah.
Right? So you use chess as an onboarding tool for parents. Right? So that's just as an example. And we can all say chess is not an e-sport, sure. But it's a great competitive game. Right? And tomato, tomato. As if it onboards the right kind of audiences, which is, to me, parents saying, my kid's playing a video game. And this is influencers, and this is a safe space, and there are so many young people, and this can be a career. That's much better than say I play Counter-Strike to go ahead and I kill people to go ahead and do this, and terrorists win.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those things that as gamers we are okay, but think about it for the first time if you're a parent and you hear that, you're like,
It's
right?
true.
That's one edge. And the other part, which I'm very proud of, is we launched a degree and a certificate program. Now we are running it in 7 countries. We have about 1,000 kids who we've graduated through our education program. And it's very selfish for us. We believe that our industry needs gamers to be in our industry. We've not been able to go ahead and find adjacencies, which is there. So from a broadcast perspective, you'd be like, oh, let's find someone from TV. Too expensive, too slow, too old school.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh, but I need someone else who can go ahead and do this. If you just take a caster who's doing it, they need to go ahead and spend 1,000 hours before they're ready. But can you go ahead and teach someone OBS? Can you teach, which you were talking about, can you teach someone how to go ahead and use, I don't know, stream elements? Can you teach someone how to use that camera?
Yeah.
Can you put a Razer camera and just learn how to go ahead and do normal production? Can you actually make a profit and loss statement? Can you actually go ahead and make a business plan, even if you have to tell ChatGPT to do it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those are all important ones. Can you write a sponsorship package? Can you make a deck?
Yeah.
Can you go ahead and tell people what your value proposition is? Right? Those are just skills you need to take people through. And those are skills that can be taught. So we actually have degree programs in India, in Indonesia, in Jordan, in Malaysia, where kids learn how to be gaming and esports professionals. Right? It's 2 years program with an internship. You get paid $1,000 starting off as a minimum salary. So that's actually good to go ahead and do.
Amazing.
Right? So without those 2 vectors, I think we will sell ourselves short, because the supply of great innovative kids who can think out of the box.
Talent.
Look at the age of people sitting here, right? He's probably the youngest person who's sitting there. Both of you are just. But I'm 45, and I've been doing this for about 12 years now. But we need another 25-year-old person to go out and say, you know what? Let's do something innovative about it. And you won't do that if you don't skill them.
So, follow-up question there. One, are you degree granting, like recognized by the government? That's spectacular. Did you start this? It's a crazy segue.
I know.
Did you start this because you found that post-secondary institutions weren't providing it to the level that you needed it?
Correct.
Ooh, over to you, Neil.
Listen, I'm in great alignment with both of my colleagues here around what they said. At Overactive, we think of our audience and our business as a community. And there's a social contract. We want to look after the community. We want to raise up these young men and women, whether it's athletes, whether it's professional athletes, whether it's semi-pro, whether it's aspiring, whether it's viewers, or whether it's just casual fans. We want to give them an experience where they feel like they get something back from us. And when I say that is in the age of social media and digital marketing, it's a community, a social online community that raises the individual much more than 30 years ago where it was at home alone, right? So when we think about it, we provide all kinds of outlets, and whether that's through great partners like Bell. Last week we did a Bell gaming night where we had people as young as 3 years old all the way up to, 50, 60 years old show up to Bell gaming night at the Scotiabank Arena in partnership with the Toronto Raptors, Uprising, Bell, of course, and just giving them opportunities and experiences that they might not have.
Yeah.
That can be playing games, whether it's Fortnite, Street Fighter, Valorant, NBA 2K. It can be playing basketball in the same court where the Raptors play. Scotty Barnes, LeBron James, all of these great players play on that court. And whether you're from Scarborough, whether you're from Markham, whether you're from Pickering or Burlington, you show up, you're accepted, you get that experience to play games, which you love, play basketball, which you love, and be with your family. And that's when we talk about the stigma. It's getting the parents involved and having them buy in. The way that I played soccer or tennis or basketball with my father, now you're starting to see people Akshat's age, my age, do that with their kids, playing Fortnite. The new map comes out, they're playing that. And when you think about
Squid Games,
Fall Guys, whatever it may be, Street Fighter, when you think about the stigma that we're breaking down as businesses, whether it's one-to-one, whether it's business to business, or whether it's B2B to C, which is what we really are. We do business with other businesses, but we're really a consumer-facing brand. We've got to show them the benefits and the power of video gaming and what that can bring, from inclusivity to community finding, to problem solving, and just a general finding joy and passion in something that you love. Not all of us are going to be great basketball players or football players, but if we love Fortnite or we love Street Fighter and we can find our community and we can connect with our parents or our siblings or our peers through that, that's a win. And that's how we change the world.
Amazing. Yeah. So question for you, Alex, but before I ask you that question, somebody in the chat, David, loves your varsity jacket.
What's up,
wondering
David?
where he can get that. From Toronto.
All right, David.
Great esports broadcaster. You probably know him already. Where can he get that jacket?
Well, if you go to shop.torontoultra.gg, they might have some available. I don't know, but this might be a limited edition run. But drop me a DM at Neil Duffy on Twitter. I'll respond, and we'll make sure if we have some, you'll get access to purchase them.
All right, David, you heard it. So, Alex, on this topic of education, you make infrastructure to support all of these movements, including academia.
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to educate folks about in terms of quality, stature, anything that you have in your head regarding what your brand stands for?
Like, one of the things that's very interesting is what Akshay said. You guys are involved with education also. Like, that's what we're trying to do with TMU. That's what we're trying to do with U of T, with multiple different colleges and universities in Canada currently and in China. But you're a serial entrepreneur. So, but we all know the time span of educating is pretty long. It's not like you're doing it today, tomorrow, boom, you get an intern. And the day after, boom, now they can come in and work.
Yeah.
It takes at least 2 years. Like, the fastest one you work with is grad school. 2 years minimum. If you work with undergrad, 4 years. That's one question before I move on to the answers. So does it mean that you're gonna stay in the esport industry for the next at least 4 to 10 years, or this is just a little journey that you do on the esport side, but you're doing this just for the community, for the esport community, even though you might not be involved with esport company anymore, but you're still gonna be just helping the whole community grow.
Well, to me, I think esports is. Let me give this example as a pop culture example, right?
Yeah.
Do you like music?
Yeah.
Great. Do you like music?
Yes.
I do not know a single person who would say no,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And I think gaming
Yeah.
is as big as music,
Yes.
but as a definition of the word, right?
Yeah.
The question I should be asking is, what kind of music do you like?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like asking the question, do you like food?
Yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of have to survive with it.
Yeah.
But you might like Chinese or Indian or
Yeah.
Mexican, or you might like hip hop or rock, or
Yeah.
you might like a competitive game, you might like a social game, and
Yep.
those would change over time. And
Yep.
your choice of game, your choice of music, your
Yep.
choice of food
Yeah.
is you,
Yes.
is your definition.
Yeah.
I think I would always be in the gaming space, and I
Yes.
think as gaming would become, gaming is 6 billion. We can't, if you're that big, we are the biggest we're the biggest country on the planet, right?
Yeah.
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 Right. So, if that is there, we need more identities to
Yeah.
us. So I'm a Star Trek fan, right? So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say I'm a Star Trek fan. But if I have 10 million Star Trek fans, I don't have an identity. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a Star Trek fan from India.
Yeah.
Like, great. Now I have, I don't know, 2 million.
Yeah.
But it's too big. Then like, I'm a Star Trek fan from India who likes to go ahead and be on a Google Pixel phone.
Yeah.
Now I have my identity. Now
Yeah.
I probably have only 10,000 of me,
Yeah.
right? And as we get more and more identities, the base of this gamer planet
Yeah.
is what my space will be.
Yeah.
Is esports going to be always part of it? Always.
Yes.
But that's like going and saying,
see.
will you always have a phone?
Yeah. I
Right?
see.
Which esport title
Yeah.
is the relevant question, right?
Yeah.
I think those would evolve. I think we have 2 titles in the world, which is Counter-Strike, 3 maybe, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, and Valorant,
Yep.
which is now about 20, 25 years.
Yep.
But most of the other titles are younger, and they die, which are there. So we would always be in the basis of gaming. We'd always be in the business of esports.
Yeah.
And as choices change over
Yeah.
time, you
Yeah.
like McDonald's and tomorrow like Burger King,
Yeah.
and that's fine. I think those would just be nuances.
Yeah.
And if you have the skill set, if you build the skill set
Yeah.
and the muscle memory of going and doing
Exactly.
that over time, that's why we invest in the youth. Because
see.
it doesn't matter what game they will love. They love
Exactly.
a game.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like what we're Chris are working on, like how TMU structure the creative school with gaming. Like, it is anything associated to gaming is actually everything that we see right now
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
Every single industry. I don't know one industry that doesn't involve
Yep.
with gaming. And now I start to understand. Okay, as an entrepreneur, as a serial entrepreneur, the smartest way or the safest way of starting a new business is building on your existing business, use your knowledge to pour off the off branch, which highly likely is going to be associated to a gaming again, which, okay, it makes sense with your move in the education sectors now. And back to the question where
yeah.
Chris was asking on the infrastructure, on education and what we do with them. I feel like it's two sides. One side is purely on our own expertise on whatever we do in the esport or gaming industry that involve with the algorithm that we do right now that can go closely with AI, with machine learning, with engineering, like how to code on the graphic, how to know audio signal, how to convert them into different key events. That would be one. And then another one, but this is just trendy. Like I bring them up just because it's trendy.
Yeah.
And the next one will be a very useful one, but it's not, like we don't see much expert in this industry right now. It's sensory design.
Yeah.
Sensory design, a lot of people say, okay, visual is one, okay, sound is one, okay, and now what about haptic? What about smell? What about taste? The design of the whole sensory package is something that's, I think game is going to be the one pushing it. It's a couple of them.
Yeah.
Either military, adult industry, or game. That's the only 3 industry going to push the whole sensory. Like, can you think of any other ones?
Yeah.
That's the 3. It's always those three that push any type of new technology. So us being in the gaming industry can really have upper hand on how to deliver the whole sensory package. And then the business on the esports structuring, the partnership and all the stuff, that's all the expertise that we are building in with different schools and universities and all the programs. But also another thing that we've been trying to say for the last 4 days is the house of experts that we do. Like bringing Neil in, bringing Akshay in, bringing Tom in, like Chris is already in it. Bringing all the guest speakers that we had for the last couple of days, like the expertise, the knowledge that we have in the whole esport or game industry or the business industry is something it's not that easy to access within the education sector. For kids 18, 19 years old, stay in school, like listen to a lecture, for them to talk to the CEO of Norway, like talk directly to the oldest esport team in the world, to the biggest entertainment organizer in Toronto. That's not that often. But I think this is critical. This is vital for the kids to know. Like they need to see. I'm not saying we're their idol, but I think they need to.
You might be their idol.
Might be, but they need to see their idol. They need to see what the expert is doing in the field, so they can actually, like, instead of just like the biggest scam, not a scam, but a semi-scam that I got tricked into. I was studying animation. Like that was my first major. Now after working in Counter-Strike for so many years, speaking the word major is just kind of strange. My first major was animation. It was nothing like what I thought it would be. I thought it would be like, oh, you go in, you design animation, you're creating cartoon or cool graphic. No. Animator means you're sitting there drawing 24 frames per second for 8 hours a day.
Oh, God.
And you didn't design that frame. It's the character designer, it's the stage designer, it's the story runner, it's the copywriter. It's all them writing down everything already. The only thing you do is sitting there with a 45-degree board that's lit up, and then you trace for 24 frames, exactly the same thing. That's what animator is. But, well, some of the animators. But I think that if I knew what that is at the beginning, I wouldn't go in the major. So that's the same thing I feel like for the so-called e-sport or the gamer kids or that sector in the education. A lot of people might be gamer. A lot of people might be interested in e-sport or game, but they might not want to pursue this route. Or someone like the lawyer, the lawyer student that you said.
Yeah.
That was, I always feel like that's a prime example.
So I have a class, I teach game design at Toronto Metropolitan University, and a game design class this year had 864 students.
Wow.
11 disciplines across the university, because I believe that, as you mentioned, there's not a single, this is what I said in my TED Talk, there's not a single job, trade, or discipline that does not exist within video games and esports. And to me, that's a conduit to bring students in to be like, oh, I like video games. Wait, I could do finance here? So I taught the course this year in a theater because there were no classrooms large enough. And I got an email at the end of a term from a criminology student who said, I took this course because folks said it was fun. I couldn't believe how much I learned. So for those of you who don't know, the structure of the class is we start off with some theory. Then we have conversation about industry and what's happening. And the last hour of each class, all students in the theater put their name on a list, and I randomly choose a player to come and play the video game that matches the conversation of the day in front of the students.
Oh, it's so fun.
I'll show you some footage later.
It's amazing.
She had said, I'd never known that my degree in criminology could connect in some way, shape, or form to the video games industry. And now I know that. And I was talking to her about...
You make a play Beyond Human or something.
Oh, yeah. There is, or what's the guy's name? Objection. Ace Attorney. Anyway, so we were talking about there's a law firm in Toronto called Spark Law, and they focus on esports and video game law.
They should sponsor us now. By the time, like, how many times we mention their name? They should pay us some money now.
I'll connect you. Alexandra, actually, I'll connect you. Yeah. So when entering school, if TMU were to say, we have a lane in esports and IP law for video games, I can promise you enrollment's going to go up. Because in Canada, 61% of Canadians play video games, according to Electronic Standards Association of Canada, just for reference sake. Y'all could double check that. But just to say that I believe what you're doing and what you're doing equals what the future of education could and should be.
Yep.
Because you're leveraging that passion for something like, well, I really only like the analytics behind CS. Really? Oh, let me tell you about data analytics, which is also being taught in other fields but outside of video games.
Yep.
All right.
This
I
is
actually
definitely.
think I'm going to go if you're doing that, when we started our education program, world peace, we will solve everything in the world with our education program. It sucked. Yeah. It sucked so bad. Because we overthought this. We thought we were going to change the world with it.
Yeah.
We thought that we were going to go ahead and give all of this, which is there.
Yeah.
We are the saviors for these kids. It's actually the other way around.
Yes, it is.
Right. So one of the wow things that we did was, and this is from the first batch of 20 kids who came out. They were like, you know what? We're doing this so we get jobs. But you're not good enough to get a job. It's like, hang on. How about we work for 6 months as an internship, and you cycle us in 5 of these companies. You don't have to pay us. The government pays a stipend, which is there. But if you like what we do, can we have a job? Right? So interestingly, we now have an absorption rate for about 40% of the class within the company.
Nice.
But
Wow.
that's just us.
Yeah.
If I now put 10 people and 10 companies together, we have an absorption rate of 120%. We now fight on which kids
Yep.
is going where.
That's brilliant.
Right? So, and we'd be shocked that someone was like, oh, but I can't pay you. And the kid was, dude, I'm 18 years old. My mom's got my back.
Yeah. Exactly.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. The way that we tackled it in my classroom, I said 864, is at the beginning of each term, right before enrollment begins, I take a breakdown. I'll tell you, for example, 309 students out of the 800 were computer science students, half of which were computer science co-op students. But what I do is I take a look at all the disciplines, and then I modify the curriculum to match every person in the room. And what that does is, which is why the criminology students say, I didn't know where my superpower ended up. I was like, well, I cheated. I found out that that superpower was there, and then I modified my curriculum. But this is the idea. Everything that you all are talking about is talking to the fan base, talking to the folks that are going to go out and be the future. And I feel that that's why you exist as an impression on what could and should be happening with education.
Yep.
Well, one thing I want to say about this, and this is a shout out to our dear friend Garvey. He said this to me many years ago. He's a very smart guy, Mark Candela, former Twitch executive. He said, if you want to know the future, talk to a young person about their goals.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. I don't know why, but shout out Garvey. We love him. And I think it resonates to exactly what you're saying is in the classroom, we were taught a very specific way of education. That standard may not be the standard today. It sounds like you're evolving in your classroom from non-traditional to more focus-based or student-based. And I love to hear that because I wasn't a great student. And I didn't learn in a traditional way. It just didn't fit the way that I operate. And for that result, I was deemed to be not an A student.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I didn't have A expectations of myself or A ambitions in this world. It just means I didn't fit that mold. So I love everything I hear about what you're doing, and I want to sit in on this this massive lecture.
You're welcome anytime. All I try to do is strive to be the teacher I wish I had. And
Love
when I
that.
walk up on stage with my Steam Deck and I talk about the games that I'm playing, and I tell students, hey, go look up Video Games Prof on Steam and look at my Steam library, they're like, yo, this guy's the professor of video games for a reason. They see the hours. Yo, Chris, what were you doing this week? And I say, hanging out with my kids. The final question I have for you all, I would love to hear your individual visions of what you see in your said lanes of esports, business, media production, design, and beyond, starting with you, Tom.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for us within a partnerships perspective, right, when we're working with brands, is that brands are learning more and more about the benefits based on the audience, right, as opposed to being based on a stereotype or a pre-expectation around what a gamer is, right?
Yeah.
I think that is shifting, and I started talking to brands about gaming almost 10 years ago, and that's we were still at a point where you maybe wouldn't want to just share that you were a gamer with people that you might be friends with because you thought you might get judged for it.
Yeah.
That has changed drastically over the last 10 years, and there's a parallel between that and how brands are seeing gaming as well. And it's slower, I think, but it's getting there. And so what that means for us over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of esports is that we'll have the ability to work with even more brands that allow us to access even more different types of audiences. And I think it just, you know, what that opportunity is, from my perspective, is we get to be more a part of a mainstream culture. It legitimizes esports and gaming in a bigger way and accelerates that process. And then my hope is that, you know, you get the investment on the return of that, and that puts you in a position where, as a team, you can go into more games, you can get more players, you can get more creators, you can get co-streamers, you can, you know, be potentially less reliant on publishers, but then the publishers also get the benefit, and so suddenly, you know, high tide rises all ships.
Yep.
If through that education we can grow the industry as a whole, I think everyone's going to benefit from that. And all that means is you need people at those companies that are gamers themselves, that are passionate, that maybe are the people who, you know, went to one of your classes and they ended up at one of these companies and they're like, wait, I know about this industry. I think I can do something cool here.
Yeah.
And then that creates the opportunity and that creates the growth. I think that's what I'm most excited about, and that's one of the things that we're on the tipping point, I think, in gaming, of being able to talk to those people that are native as opposed to the older generation who might not feel as comfortable with it.
Amazing. Opening up new vectors. Akshat, sealed to play.
To us, look, we invested and bought Comic-Con. And licensed it. We bought Comic-Con outside the US.
Yeah.
So we are now not only in India, we are going to Dubai, we are going to Tashkent, we are going to Bangkok, and we are expanding that. And you'd be like, why Comic-Con? But think about it, right? Why not Comic-Con?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? As soon as I say it, you're like, yeah, that's the TG, right?
Yes.
Because everyone in Comic-Con is a gamer.
Yes.
Now, they might manifest themselves by going and being dressed up as cosplay.
Yep.
They might want to go ahead and play Fortnite.
Yep.
They might want to play Candy Crush competitively.
Yep.
And that's fine. Who says Candy Crush is not competitive? You should see people who are competitive in Candy Crush. They get fairly visceral about it, right? And then the definition of what is competitive, what is esports, what is gaming becomes very ubiquitous to go and say, what are you building for? And as younger people keep on coming into this, we believe, honestly, that the best way to go ahead and serve the youth of the world is not going to be traditional media. We'll have our own language. We'll have our own communication. Because it's like food, it's like music. Given we are no longer trying to convince people to be gamers. They're already gamers. We are now just trying to go ahead and give them identities of what is there. You have a Steam Deck and you built that example of what game works for who. We have 1 billion games, well, not billion, maybe 100 million games that would have ever come on planet Earth, from everyone from doing rock, paper, scissors on it. But eventually there's a game for everyone. And there's an identity for everyone. And then, I kid you not, we can all sit together and probably go ahead and do Dungeons and Dragons. Right? And then there's a game around that, and there is an identity around that. Commonality of interests across youth, where you'll find this your cohort, you'll find your jam, is something which we look for. And that's where innovation comes in. That's where everything we talked about comes in. But just find your gang.
Amazing. Neil, your vision.
Well, between our two brands, Movistar Koi in Europe, Toronto Ultra in North America, listen, our ambition's clear. We want to be the biggest gaming and esports team in the world. I think we already are when it comes to Spanish-speaking language. We're headquartered in Madrid, but you know we're going to go into Mexico soon. That's might be another world exclusive. We've got some ambitions down there. We also want to expand our games offering. In North America right now, we're just in Call of Duty, but we want to be in other games. We want to become a household name. And when we think about everything we've said about movies, music, media, sports, entertainment, there's no denying that gaming is that. And it's. I remember in 2015, I said something. I got laughed out of the room. I was at a sports tech conference, and I said, in my lifetime, esports and gaming will be the third biggest sport in the world behind soccer and basketball. And everybody laughed at me, and I was somewhat embarrassed and put my tail between my legs and went home. But that's come true. 10 years. And I think definitively that is true. And I think we've got a great brand. And when we look at the audience, when we look at the streams, the teams, the events that we're putting on, there's an appetite and there's an audience. And we love our competition with Fnatic, especially in the LEC, we are so admiring of many of the other great brands, T1, Gen G, G2, and we think there's space for there to be 10 tier 1 global esports brands, and we will be one of them.
Amazing. Alex.
Yeah. Industry-wise, I can't say much because it's already booming. We already know it is a future. It is growing. It is in the right direction. I'm just gonna be selfishly speaking about myself. Like I just want to strengthen the partnership that we have already. Neil been working for 2 years. Tom been a year now almost. Actually, we just started, and we will be going strong and stronger. So my hope will be strengthen whatever partnership that we have, build a stronger team every single day, and then bring in new partners so we can build the whole ecosystem, so we can push the industry. That's my vision.
All right. That's amazing. Folks, thank you so much for being with us today at LEC. Look at me now.
Hey.
That's next weekend.
CES 2025 here at Vegas in the Blacklyte booth. Thank you so much. We appreciate all the comments here. Follow the live stream, connect with us. Oh, we're supposed to go around and find out how everybody can get in touch with each one of you. Starting with you, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tom Harris, very easily. That's where I spend most of my time talking to brands. Otherwise, at Fnatic on Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, definitely get involved and watch some esports. LEC is next weekend, and so we got a new roster. And good luck to you guys.
Same to you.
Hope it's a good year.
That's why I foreshadowed that.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the easiest. My first name and last name, or just Google us.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Neil Duffy, but I encourage you to follow at Toronto Ultra and at Movie Star Koi for all the latest updates on our teams.
How do we get in touch with you, Alex?
Blacklyte official, you guys already know.
All right, thank you folks for your time and energy. Take good care. Make sure to watch the previous streams in addition to this one and leave your comments in the chat. Take good care, and we'll see you next time. Show them the booth again one more time, please.